Hello and welcome everyone. My name is Rachel Glaze, coordinator here at ISACA, and I'm very excited to present our next webinar in ISACA's Cybersecurity Nexus webinar series. Today's event will focus on the 2015 Mobile Threat Report, The Rise of Mobile Malware. Before we get started today, I wanted to go through a few quick tips. This event is intended to be interactive, so please text in your question using the Ask a Question box located in the top left corner of your player window. The audio is being streamed over your computer, so if you do experience any audio or visual issues today, please click the question mark icon located in the top right corner of your player window. Also, don't forget to rate today's event by using your feedback button. If you do have any questions or suggestions regarding the CSX webinar series, please email elearning@isaca.org. Also, we want to remind you to use our attachments button where you can find some great resources. You can download the PowerPoint presentation, go to the event homepage to find a link to the CPE quiz. All ISACA members can earn one free CPE for attending this event. Also, we do have some great links to ISACA's CSX certification, learning tools, and upcoming events, as well as some really great assets from our sponsor today. I'm really excited to welcome our speaker. Ori Bach is a product and risk management expert with 12 years of expertise in the financial services, fraud, and compliance space. He currently serves as a senior security strategist at IBM Trusteer. Ori previously worked at NICE Actimize for 9 years as a director of solutions management, where he oversaw various aspects of the company's fraud and case management solutions. Ori has an LLB degree from the Tel Aviv University and is a member of the Israel Bar Association. Ori's special interests are analytics and the interdependencies between risk management and customer experience. Welcome, Ori. The floor is yours.
Thank you so much. Once again, my name is Ori Bach. I'm a senior security strategist with IBM Trusteer, focusing on different digital and mobile solutions. And what a senior security strategist means within IBM is that my job is to work with the different research groups that we have. A lot of them are focused on mobile threats, understand what those threats are, and then work with our different customers to develop their strategy. Today I'm going to be sharing some insights from a recent report that we've put together that is focusing on mobile malware. As I talk about mobile malware, I will also put it in the context of the bigger threat landscape for mobile. In the next 45 minutes or so, I'm going to talk about the state of mobile security in general. I'm going to hopefully give you some basic understanding of what is the threat landscape, what is malware within that threat landscape, what are the other threats that exist. I'll talk about how mobile malware infections happen. I'll talk about how cybercriminals are monetizing on those infections. Those infections always have a reason behind them, and I'll talk about different schemes, different ways that cybercriminals make money off infections. Hopefully that will connect with some of the challenges that many of you have. It doesn't really matter if you are in charge of managing mobile in general, just looking at your security strategy as mobile fits into it, looking at how to protect your consumers who use different mobile assets such as mobile banking and other types of apps. So we'll talk a little bit about the challenge that you're facing. And then I'll provide some very important perspective from the cybercrime underground. And this is important because cybercriminals, like ourselves, do not operate in a vacuum. They operate within an ecosystem. Each one of the companies that you work for would probably not function well if it did not have vendors and suppliers. Cybercriminals are the same, so I'll talk about what's available, what tools they can buy on the different underground forums. I'll share some posts, some tools, as well as the price list of some of the leading malware. And I'll wrap it up by talking about some of the consumer awareness and mobile security challenges. Ultimately, our weakest link is probably the end user, and this could be a consumer, it could be an enterprise user. It's very important to understand what is the situation there and what needs to be done. And I'll present some notion of what a security strategy needs to look like from our perspective. At 3 points during this presentation, we will be presenting polling questions, which I would love if you guys would answer, and we would present those questions. Obviously, we're going to only present summary results, so none of your specific responses would be presented. I think it's going to give us some interesting view as to how the different statistics that I would share as part of our report relate to your point of view, the point of view of the people on this call. Let's start. On a very high level, what is the state of mobile security? First of all, mobile is huge. I'm telling you something that you probably already know and have heard multiple times. There are about to be more mobile phones, more smartphones than people on our planet. The Economist recently had an issue titled Planet of the Phones. We are in many ways addicted to our phones. We use it to do all kinds of actions, financial actions, to work. Some people even take it to the bathroom. I personally have to admit that about 5 to 10 minutes after I wake up, I would be using my phone. Some of you even on this call are probably using your phone as we talk. So there's a lot of phones out there, and by definition that attracts a lot of attention from cybercriminals, a lot of security issues. People are downloading a lot of software, so the phones themselves are one aspect, but ultimately people are interacting, using them to download different applications. We have 108 billion downloads by 2017, and today 11.6 distinct devices have been identified as having malware. This is a number from Lucent. So one type of indication. Another type of indication, which I will share later, is the number of infected devices that we've been seeing for monitoring of devices. And just to give you another indication as to what the state is, about 90% of the top mobile applications have been hacked, meaning that exists somewhere in the world. Somebody was able to crack the code and create some type of rogue or fake app of that same nature. So got a lot of phones. We've got a lot of security issues. At a high level, obviously, this is why this is a big focus area and why we get a lot of people asking us to work with them on their mobile strategy. What is the state of security? If the threat is so high, unfortunately, it is abysmal. There's a couple of studies out there that they all say the same thing. One of them is the IBM-sponsored Penniman Institute study, and they interviewed different stakeholders, people that manage mobile security. A staggering result was that about half of them allocate no budget for mobile security. So if you look at what is the state of mobile security, if you have no money assigned to it, you're not doing anything about it, obviously it is not good, and there is a risk. A lot of other indications are out there, and some people are investing in it, but a lot of people don't feel comfortable that they do have a strategy that actually covers all of the threats, or even if they have the strategy, they're struggling with executing it. One of the challenges is that mobile is advancing so fast. Mobile is the number one priority for banking IT, for instance, in North America, according to a recent survey. It's very hard to catch up with all of those different developments. More services are being rolled out, different applications and services are being rolled out. Very hard for security to keep pace. Obviously, cybercriminals do have the benefit of being more agile, and they do keep pace with all those different changes. So overall, we have a high level of threat and, unfortunately, a relatively low state of security. This is obviously not just a concern for us. This means for cyber criminals looking to target a specific organization or a firm that they have the online channel, which is probably more hardened. There's more security out there, more maturity, and they have this soft target, which is the mobile channel. As a result, the mobile cybercrime underground is very much evolved, and we'll talk a little bit about the types of things that you can buy there. Regulators are also in the picture, and they sort of tend to fall into two buckets. Some of them just say you need to secure the mobile channel in the same way that you secure, the web channel. So that's not saying a lot, but it is setting of an expectation that there really is no excuse just because mobile is newer that it should be less secure. Some of them are more prescriptive, and they actually tell us, and this is mostly for specific industries such as the financial industry, and they tell us you need to do specific things. You cannot allow jailbroken or rooted devices to connect to your network. You should do active malware monitoring. You should secure different types of assets and application. I think one of the interesting things to look at is the mobile technology layer security model developed by FSI-SAC Beats, and they actually mapped out what are the risks that exist both to enterprise users. This is specific to banking because FSI-SAC is focused on banking. what are the risks to enterprise users, what are the risks to business partners, what are the risks to consumers, with some recommendations as to how to look at that. European regulation is also telling banks that they need to monitor mobile devices. They need to monitor. They need to monitor for malware. They need to monitor for different types of fraud events that involve mobile devices, such as the fact that the mobile device is used as an authentication method. However, the mobile device is malware infected. So that's a specific thing that they call out and are looking for the industry. Other industries have other types of regulatory requirements related to them. However, none of those are actually prescriptive enough for us to say, okay, this is what we need to do. Here's a roadmap strategy that we can just adopt. Overall, I think they're giving us specific tips or pointers, but they're really telling us you need to have a strategy that is robust and specific to your organization. So you need to understand the organization that are specific to your risk, specific to the kind of mobile application or mobile access that you are enabling, and be able to, with confidence, say, yes, I have the appropriate steps to mitigate those. With that, I'd like to ask you the following polling question, which will also appear on the platform. How would you rate your own state of mobile security, the mobile security strategy for your firm? Do you think that you have a fully mature strategy? Is it still maybe perhaps somewhat mature but still evolving? Is it basic, or you have none, meaning that currently there is no really strategy or no tactics in place as to how to deal with the threats that are out there? Please use the voting button to answer, and in about a couple of seconds we'll present the results. Excellent. For those of you can press the votes tab. You can see the results will be presented shortly. We can close the polling now. Just interesting for you to see, where are you versus perhaps where some of your peers see themselves, and keep in mind the unfortunate industry results, which is about that 50% of organizations today do nothing. All right, now let's take it a level down and try to understand when we talk about mobile threats, what is it that we're talking about? And as I went into this area and studied it myself a couple of years back, you get a lot of things thrown at you, a lot of terms. You need to be careful and protect your organization against fake apps. You need to have your app be protected against hacking. Bring your own device is a big problem. Mobile malware is a big problem. Outdated operating systems, jailbroken rooted devices, that's a bad one, and so forth, unsecure Wi-Fi. And just having a bucket list of different things doesn't really help us, because we need to figure out how do those things actually relate to one another, how do those things actually relate to ourselves. I want to present a certain point of view as to how all of those different things really relate to one another. So let's go over that. Overall, in terms of what we're looking at for security, we obviously want to actually identify people that use our mobile assets, right? If Ori is logging in through an app, we want to make sure it's Ori and not somebody else. We want to stop fraud, and we want to protect the data. And as we look at those different things, that really translates into securing the device, securing the transaction, and securing the application. Securing the device means that we need to have a strategy in place that deals with the fact that devices are lost or stolen, right? I use my mobile phone a lot, and I travel it a lot, and unfortunately I also break it and lose it a lot. So I lost it already twice in the last couple of years, and then somebody has that mobile device. What data would he be able to access? Would he be actually able to access it? Could I wipe it remotely? All different answers that I need to, different questions that I need to answer. First of all, what would happen if the device would be stolen, and B, how I would react. So that's one type of risk. we have this issue of outdated operating systems, and unfortunately mobile users are not very good at updating and keeping their operating systems up to date. Some of the malware that's operating out there is actually targeting certain vulnerabilities in very outdated operating systems. So what happens if somebody that has a really outdated operating system that has a known security vulnerability is now accessing a mobile asset? They're now using a mobile banking application, they're using an internal enterprise application. How do I deal with that fact that I know that this device is not secure because I know there is a known security vulnerability for that operating system version? What happens if the device is jailbroken and rooted? What happens if it's a vulnerable device? Some devices that are being sold today publicly actually come pre-built with malware. I'll talk a little bit about that later, but that's another type of device. Do I want those devices to be able to connect to my resources? If I secure the device, I still need to look at the application. First of all, is the application one that can be hacked? If it can be hacked, it will be hacked. As I said, 90% of applications have been hacked today, meaning that there will be a fake version of my application, and that obviously has a huge impact on brand. It might have an impact on revenue if I'm actually selling this application. It also has an implication on fraud, because a good way to perform fraud, I'll use banking as an example, is to have a fake version of the banking application, have somebody download it and provide all of their details through that banking application. So all of those different things might happen if my app is actually prone to hacking. Now let's talk about mobile malware and specifically rogue apps. And I'm going to distinguish between fake applications, which could actually perform their legitimate stated function. So it could be a game that is simply the same game, but the only difference is that somebody has created a fake copy of it and is able to sell it in an unofficial market, is able to monetize it in some way, but it's still, in terms of its functionality, very similar or the same as the original application. I'm going to separate that out from rogue apps or weaponized apps. Those are apps that, in addition to whatever the original intended functionality was, have malicious content in them. For me, that's a subcategory of mobile malware, because malware is malicious software, and this is a malicious software. It might have a legitimate element to it, but at the end of the day, it's infected and is malicious. And there are other types of mobile malware which have nothing to do with an app, so they're just running in different processes, but they're not an app in itself. Those directly relate to unsecure devices, because one of the main infection vectors of mobile malware and rogue applications is out-of-date operating systems, jailbroken rooted devices, and vulnerable devices. So those allowing unsecure devices to connect to my resources, to my mobile assets, would obviously put me at risk for that problem with the application, for that mobile malware rogue apps. And I could have vulnerabilities within the app itself. So it is my app, it is a legitimate app, however, it is easy for somebody to look at sensitive data, to manipulate it in some way. So that's another type of problem that I need to look at from the application. Then finally, let's assume that the device is secure and I've secured the application. I still need to secure the transaction. So I could have a very safe device, I could have a really good and security-aware application. However, I'm connecting and through an unsecure Wi-Fi connection, therefore all of my data is being intercepted, for instance. Or somebody is using the mobile application to perform mobile fraud. They're taking over an account. So everything is legitimate in terms of the device, the application. However, the person logging in is not the actual legitimate user. He's somebody that's stolen credentials. And finally, and obviously this is sort of the nightmare situation, what if somebody uses this mobile transaction as the point of entry into my organization, meaning that in some way they're using an interaction between a mobile device and probably an enterprise resource in order to gain access and perform a data breach in some way and create an infection through the network. As I need to secure those three pillars, the device, the application, the transaction, I obviously have a drastically different level of control between corporate-owned assets. A couple of years back, I used to carry a BlackBerry, a company issued BlackBerry, so obviously the company both determined the make of the device. They had a policy regarding the operating system and a lot of other things that they could control, so you have a high level of control for corporate-owned assets. However, a lot of firms today are moving or have already moved, IBM included, to a bring your own device policy. And now you have, instead of just one or two makes of a mobile device that you've examined, 20 different makes, 100 different operating systems with an endless amount of different types of configuration applications, things that are running. And also, this is the employee's device, meaning that he does and will conduct certain personal business. There will be personal data on that device. He would change that device. He might legitimately want to store different things on that device and have personal use for it. So that's another type of problem to deal with. What is it that I can enforce or not enforce, and how much control I have there? Then moving on to, let's say, temp workers, obviously even less control. Business partners probably are not only servicing me, but also the business partners of others. So they might be multiple policies that they need to deal with. They might have their own policies, so they're not really open for me dictating what the security policy should be, or not really interested for my firm, for my organization, to install things on their device. And finally, they have the consumer, and the consumer is where you have almost no control. The consumer is user experience driven. If you do anything that would degrade the user experience in this very competitive space of mobile, they would probably look elsewhere. So for them, they do want the device to be secure. They are probably at a very high risk because you can't really train them. However, they would not allow you to do a lot with their device. So overall, this is the nature of the challenge and how you need to look at those different things. Another aspect to look at is, of course, okay, all of those are risks, but all of those are not equal risks in terms of what would be the impact or the frequency. So let's look at that, and again, this is a point of view. I'm sure that others have different point of views, but for me, as I look at those different risks, first of all, if I look at the situation of a stolen device, it is something that happens. However, when a device is stolen, not necessarily the person stealing it would be interested or capable of doing anything with my assets. A lot of those mobile phones that are being stolen just in order to sell them out. There could be a situation where a very sophisticated cyber criminal would target an employee of a specific organization, or would steal a phone and would notice that that phone has a banking application or some other type of application. That's true, but that's, I think, is less of a frequent event. Even if that happens, we do have good ways to deal with that. So if we put in a good, robust security password, obviously the fact that the device is stolen is not enough, and the cyber criminal also needs to in some way gain access to the device, which is problematic. For bring your own device and other company-owned assets, we can wipe it remotely. So there are different things that we can do, which may not be straightforward, but they're very known and well mapped, and it's not really a threat that would change. In terms of like stealing devices, that's a known thing. You probably have it today. It's going to keep happening, but it's not a threat that's fluctuating or developing. Slightly more risky, I would look at unsecure Wi-Fi. Again, unsecure Wi-Fi is not necessarily a frequent event because it does require the victim to be in a specific geographical location, so sitting somewhere where this unsecure Wi-Fi is deployed. The cyber criminal needs to be obviously utilizing that unsecure Wi-Fi to steal information. Again, typically, it would be hard for a cyber criminal just randomly, sitting in a coffee shop and looking at people's information to get specific information that he needs to target a specific firm. Or let's say if it's in the case of a banking payment application or another type of consumer application, that he has the expertise to specifically do something with the information for the bank, and that the user not only needs to connect to unsecure Wi-Fi, but also send out their details. Let's take the example of the banking application. Use the banking application through the unsecure Wi-Fi, allowing the cyber criminal to have the data. So it's something that could happen, probably will happen, however less frequent, and also fairly easy to deal with in terms of either not allowing access for unsecure Wi-Fi or encrypting the data in some way that would prevent the cyber criminal from understanding it. Again, it's certainly something that has existed for a number of years, but not necessarily something that will drastically develop unless cyber criminals figure out a way to deploy those unsecure Wi-Fi's en masse. Then you have the problem of outdated operating systems. I think it's a slightly bigger problem. How do we get people to actually have the most up-to-date and hopefully resistant to malware and rogue application software. Again, not every outdated operating system is automatically targeted by every type of malware. Not every type of a person having an outdated operating system would necessarily go to the places where a cybercriminal could make use of it, so an unofficial market or some web page. So again, it's a risk, but it's a risk that actually mostly supports other risks. So if I have an out-of-date operating system, other bad things might happen, but it's not a bad thing in itself, meaning an outdated operating system does not equal fraud. An outdated operating system equals a vulnerability that might be used for malware or rogue application or some other type of security attack, which would lead to fraud. Now we move up, and now we're getting to the very high-risk area, which is jailbroken rooted devices. And the reason that this is high risk is, first of all, in itself, as we play with jailbroken rooted devices in our lab, you can see everything. You can go and see data of applications. You can replace applications with another application without notifying the user. There's just an unlimited number of things that you can do, and the security for those jailbroken root devices is completely broken. That's specifically what the user intended to do, because he probably wanted to get free applications, go on an unofficial market, or do other things with his phone. I am aware, as a side note, that some of the more sophisticated users of, let's say, iPhones that jailbreak them also put in different types of security and actually feel that their phones are more secure as a result of that. But I think that's the exception and not the rule. Most people that would jailbreak or root their device would do so in order to go into third-party markets, and I think a huge amount of the applications there, I believe there's some statistics saying that about 50% of the fake applications that exist on those markets are actually weaponized in some way, so have malware in some way. So that's another risk. Again, that is a risk that would probably lead to, it's a vulnerability that would lead to another type of risk. And finally, we get to malware and rogue applications, which I put at the top, and part of the reason that we focused on malware and created a report on malware. This has a direct link to fraud. Malware, and we'll talk about different types, was developed for a reason, which would be to steal information, to perform some other type of fraud, such as premium number fraud, to steal a one-time password, cyber espionage. There's a reason that somebody has created that malware. It is related to some type of monetary scheme. Again, rogue apps are basically malware wrapped into a legitimate application. That's the same thing. If you have that, at the minimum, you should assume that whatever data that is going between your application and between the mobile device and your servers is compromised at a minimum. Could be worse. Could be that it's also able to perform actions, or could be that it's able to infiltrate your network. So this is why we think that this is probably one of the areas that needs to be looked at more carefully, and it is one that is evolving. I started with saying that a stolen device is a stolen device, but malware today is not malware tomorrow. It is something that keeps evolving. They keep coming up with new tricks, new capabilities. If we conduct this same webinar in 6 months, in the next section where I talk about specific types of malware, I would talk about completely different things, because the market, the cybercrime market, will change. They will have other types of capabilities. They are highly adaptive to security measures, meaning that most of those malware are being developed not only to perform a specific type of malicious action, but also to evade detection as it does that. They are very much aware of the different things that firms and institutions use in order to secure mobile devices. And for instance, a lot of those malware have root hiders, so they're able to not only root the device, but also hide the fact that the device is rooted, because they understand that people are looking for that. So this is a specific category that is highly evolving and that needs to be looked at, and is also fairly frequent. How frequent? There are different statistics out there. Previously started by talking about the 16 million numbers, the 16 million number put out there by a unit of Alcatel. We also monitor a good number of devices, and pretty much in line with other industry numbers, we see about a 1% infection rate. 1% might not sound a lot as we deal with other things, but 1 in 100 means that if you have more than 100 users for a mobile asset, for your mobile resource, then you have somebody that has a malware-infected device is interacting with your system. So that's actually a lot. And this is only, again, this is at 1% at a point in time. obviously as time progresses, it's going to be it's other users that will get infected. So it's pretty high. Obviously, it fluctuates between different months and different periods, but it's pretty steady. Other numbers that exist out there put it at 1.5%. And Google, which obviously is the provider of the Android operating system and has an obvious interest to show that the device is safe, is putting it at 0.5%. So that should be sort of the range of thinking. About 1 in 100 devices at any point in time is infected by mobile malware, and that's pretty high. It is a prevalent threat. Now, let's assume that a device is infected. What does that mean? What specifically is that mobile malware doing? For instance, I don't think a lot of us are overly interested in stuff like adware that just throws out ads. So here are the top categories for malware. As I said, cybercriminals develop malware because they want to monetize on them. They actually have very interesting discussions. We've recently seen the discussion between different cybercriminals where they talked about return on investment. So they actually used the word ROI, and they had the discussion, I'm going to spend X number of dollars buying this. Is it really going to be worth it? So they're very financially driven, very smart. The basic thing is to steal financial information. Obviously, the closer you are to the money, with a financial application, the easier it is to monetize. If I can steal money directly from your account from a cybercriminal perspective, that's ideal. Second, in terms of the top monetization schemes, you have two-factor authentication or one-time password token code hijacking. What this means is that a lot of banks use the mobile, a lot of financial institutions, payment applications, use the mobile device as an out-of-band second-factor authentication, which would mean that if I now need to authorize a payment or some other type of high-value transactions, I would get something like an SMS code sent to my phone that I would need to put online. Sometimes it's an in-call. Sometimes it's the actual application itself that is a security that presents a security code. So the second category is just being able to hijack all of those. This is usually complementary to online fraud. So this is a type of cross-channel fraud where the attack begins online, and in order to complete it, the cybercriminal, the fraudster, needs to steal that code. Telephony fraud would probably be the third one. Telephony fraud means that the malware either sends SMSs to a premium number or just does outcalls to a premium number. The cybercriminal actually controls that premium number, has set it up, and he gets $1, $2, $10 for every time that an SMS is being sent. By the time that the telephone company, the mobile carrier, would actually figure out that a fraud event is happening, they would get the money and move elsewhere. So this is, again, especially popular in certain territories where those types of numbers are very common. Then you have scareware and dummy apps. So this is actually pretty interesting. Usually this starts with the victim getting a message, your mobile device is infected by a virus, or this and that has happened, and you've got performance issue, and you need to download this app. And if it's a security app, let's say you download it, we'll tell you we've cleaned the mobile device, we've removed 20 Trojans. In fact, it would do nothing, but you would just have paid money. Same thing with scareware, where it would tell you if you don't pay us XY, it's going to scrub the mobile device, or it's going to lock the mobile device, or you might have other problems, but it's actually fake. It's just messaging, but it's not really true. Another type of very popular thing is the top-up Trojan. So in certain geographies, they allow transferring money through SMSs, and basically what this Trojan does is transfer money into those accounts and then remove those accounts. And finally, you have mobile ransomware. In a minute, I'll show a screenshot of what that looks like. But this is a classic sort of PC threat that we've seen for years that has now migrated to mobile. It locks down your mobile device, looks for media, prevents access to it unless you pay a certain amount of dollars. This is not this list is not obviously exhaustive. There are a lot of other monetization schemes, a lot of other things that cybercriminals can do, but I think this is probably the most popular categories, as we've seen from different discussions in underground forums and from actually monitoring those malware. Mobile banking fraud is something that's on the rise. I think today you're probably seeing more credential theft through the mobile channel that is utilized on the online channel. And this is something interesting because banks, a lot of financial institutions that we work with don't tend to look at things or measure things that way. So they tend to look at fraud or categorize fraud from the point where the money goes out. So if the money goes out for the online channel, for the web channel, the website, rarely would they be able to effectively report and identify the fact that the credential compromise happened for the mobile channel. There was a very interesting case in Korea where a gang called the Yanibang gang, I'm probably mispronouncing it, but this was a Chinese gang that was able to perform a good amount of fraud by targeting Korean victims, and they would send them SMSs and have them install weaponized applications. They would use those applications to steal their financial information, such as their credentials to a banking application, sometimes credit card numbers, and they would use that to transfer money. They were quite successful, and they were fully within the mobile channel. So a lot of those gangs actually use the mobile channel, online channel. This one was focused on the mobile channel, and those stories come up from time to time, and this is really an emerging threat as cybercriminals are making less revenue in the online channel, especially if that's been hardened, you have a lot of security on it. Obviously, mobile becomes very attractive, either as part of a fraud, but in some cases as a single point where fraud happens. We talked about mobile ransomware, so here's an example. This is an actual example. As you can see, once you install the malware once the malware infects your mobile device, you get this message. This is the U.S. version saying this is the FBI. We have identified that you've accessed illegal child pornography. Your phone is locked. Unless you transfer money, $500, everything will be lost. And unfortunately, a certain amount of people, a certain percentage of people affected would actually pay in order to do the unlock, and they've actually built in the mechanism to do the unlock. So this is not fake. So the unlock is real. It really is impossible very hard to access the information without it, and they would actually give the victim the unlock code if he pays. So that's one very interesting flavor, and we are seeing this trend of what we call old friends crash the party, which is the same people that we have seen develop mobile malware, the same tactics that they've used for web malware, PC-type malware, the same gangs, the same methods of operation. We see them migrate into the mobile channel. I think the most concrete example that you can see is the fact that Zeus, which is the most popular type of malware, actually created its own mobile add-on, Zitmo. So Zitmo is sort of the standard XITMO in the mobile. Is the standard add-on for malware. So when Zeus developed its mobile add-on, it became Zitmo. When SpyEye developed it became Sitmo, etc. And you see those gangs really because they need to steal one-time SMS passwords. They need to compromise other types of out-of-band authentication. It's not really a standard add-on for any type of banking or financial malware. And also, as I said, you see those same gangs really going in and developing mobile capabilities. They understand it's the future. They're making an investment. They're recruiting people that are more that understand mobile better, and they're buying a lot of those toolkits online in some of the underground markets. Now let's talk about infection vector. So this is, you've got malware, it does different things, but what is it that actually causes malware infection? Let's say, and I think the big question for a lot of you, if I've got good users that are reasonable, that are not doing anything stupid, am I safe? Could this just be a matter of a little bit of education? Don't go to a third-party market or block people from going into to a market that offers them apps for free, apps that you should typically pay for. So first of all, the leading reason that somebody might have malware is malware, and this is very important. The fact that you have a malware-infected device would mean that that malware has probably some capability, stealing information, performing other things. A lot of those malware are actually also infection mechanisms for more malware. Let's look at a couple of examples, and those are some of the more prolific malware that we've seen out there, and there's a lot more detail on it in our report. Droid Dream, once it infects the device, it really creates this unique identification of the device. So it flags it, it understands different attributes about it, and then it calls back for instructions asking its operator, what malicious payload should I download? Master key is another example. Once you have a master key Trojan infection, this is for Android devices, it is able to replace legitimate applications with rogue applications. So if I'm running my email, I'm running a banking application, I'm running another payment application, without me knowing it, they can actually replace that application with another application. They do so without breaking the cryptologic signature for that application. So for me, it would look like a very simple update. In fact, I am now interacting with a weaponized application. Same thing with the fact that some of those malware actually focus on rooting or jailbreaking. So for the first infection vector to look at and to understand that if you have an infected device, it's infected with malware, but it's also absolutely prone to infection by other types of malware. And for those of you who are managing enterprise access, obviously an APT attack and an advanced persistent threat where a cyber criminal might want to gain access to your organization, so they could latch on to an existing bot network and existing infected devices of some of your users and download specific cyber espionage malware to that device in order to continuously perform the fraud. So this is a very dangerous prospect. Obviously, even that initial malware needs to happen, and the most typical thing is it's stupid, but it works, phishing and smishing. Phishing, you get a phishing email, get an email or WhatsApp message, as we've seen some of those flavors. Here's this very important invoice, important picture, you've just won something or other. All you need to do is access this link or open this file. And obviously, once you do, and this is dependent on specific vulnerabilities, you get infected. Smishing, same thing, but with SMSs. The interesting thing about smishing is that people tend to, in general, respond to SMSs. People that would ignore emails or have different filtering mechanisms on the email that would get rid of those phishing emails or put them to a promotion, garbage queue, really don't have that on when it comes to SMSs, and they tend to respond to those. And then as we look at the actual success rate for a smishing attack, it is exponentially higher than email phishing. So that's a very effective way, and it's also a way, something that can be done to a targeted group. So if I get a list of numbers, I can immediately send the SMSs to those numbers. It can also be done geographically, meaning that one way to send those SMSs would be to take over the legitimate carrier network and just send the SMSs and to a geographical location. So let's say people sitting in a shopping mall might all get the SMS, and it might even look as it's coming in from their carrier, telling them things like we have a problem with your bill, or we suddenly noticed that you've topped all of your browsing capacity, so you've downloaded too much stuff, and if you want to open it, please click here. And people actually tend to respond to that in a much higher percentages than with email phishing. Another type of infection that we're seeing is cross-channel infections. Cross-channel infections, we're seeing cyber criminals set up web pages, and as they infect the PC, somebody's PC, and this is, here you see an example of how it happens with in a banking use case. So it infects the PC, somebody tries to log into their bank, they give away their user and password, and part of that they get a fake message that appears to be coming in from Facebook or the bank saying, by the way, there's an important security update. We need you to also put it on your mobile device. Please enter your cell phone number. You put in your mobile phone number, you get an SMS with a link, and you actually are asked to install security software. That security software is actually the malware. This is very dangerous for the reason it's very targeted. This is not random, just finding out mobile users. This cyber criminal has infected the PC. He knows the user and password, the credentials for logging into online banking, and as the mobile malware infects the mobile device, it's actually connected, so he knows that it's the same user, and he can use that to perform cross-channel fraud. fake apps, that's big. People going into third-party markets, just scanning QR codes, and unfortunately, you have mobile malware also on the official markets. The stories are out there, and one of them was Angry Birds, which is obviously huge, very popular. So cybercriminals have been able multiple times to get infected apps on the official stores. At this point, I'll ask you another type of voting question, which is: do you look at the permissions for an application before you click next? So we talk about sort of what do we expect from our users. All of us are here because we're either interested in security or we're interested in mobile, so we're the most sophisticated users. Be honest, be candid. Do you actually look at the different permissions, compare them to what is the intended functionality of that application, and would not grant, for instance, an Angry Birds game access to your device calls and your network communication, your storage, and your location? Would you actually be aware of that and would cancel the installation? So let's look at those results and then later compare them to what we expect from non-savvy users, which obviously have little understanding of mobile or in mobile security. You're welcome to look at the results under the Votes tab. Now, let's talk about vulnerable devices. This is not something that happens a lot percentage-wise, but it is happening and important to look at. For instance, this story that you're seeing on the bottom, a Chinese smartphone on sale on Amazon and eBay. And it was, as you can imagine, it came with a good price. Had a little surprise in it. It had malware pre-installed. So every time you bought one of those phones, you were actually buying some malware. That's also something that needs to be taken into account. So you have a user that's buying something off Amazon, seems okay, or eBay, and what he's actually buying is a malware-infected device. So that's, again, if you're looking at sort of the users that do things that maybe we would not expect them to do or would like them not to do, like jailbreaking their devices or buying in unofficial markets, you have the people that are getting infected because they download an app from the App Store, from the Android official market, or just bought a phone, paid good money for it, and they still get the malware, and they're not doing anything that we would not expect them to do. How frequent are malware-infected apps coming into the official stores? There's a lot of stories out there, and you see one of them on the left, but I actually want to tell you a more quirky story, something that will give you an indication as to how hard or easy it is. What you're seeing on the right is a mobile app that's meant to play prayers in Arabic. And the developer, and this person was not a cyber criminal. He was really just wanted to offer this app. Uploaded the app to the Android market, and shortly after, it was found to have malware on it. What was interesting here is that this was actually PC type of malware, and as we investigated that, we understood that this infection actually happened because that developer, unknown to him, had malware, had PC type of malware. It was called Rumnet. It was on his PC, and it was infecting different files on the PC. Some of them were the source code for this application. As he packaged this application, he uploaded it into the official store, and you had malware-infected mobile app on the official store, meaning neither the cyber criminal nor the developer even intended to have an infected app on the official store, but it still happened, meaning it's fairly easy. If it happens unintentionally, somebody that's actually doing it intentionally, that is hiding the malware in different ways, and there are a lot of ways to do that, such as putting in a very small type of downloader as part of the infected app. Only once it's downloaded and activated does it put in the more detectable malicious code, for instance. There's a lot of ways to do that. This is definitely a risk. Again, legitimate users would have malware on their device, even users that take reasonable precautions in order to be safe. Now, let's talk about some sort of more futuristic type of infection vectors. there's been a demonstration, I don't think it's been in the wild, but of the fact that music can also infect mobile devices. It can access different resources. So again, cyber criminals are sort of another, people are thinking ahead. There are a lot of other, this is a little more futuristic, but definitely mobile devices, because they're really out there and they keep traveling and they have all kinds of near-field communication and other types of Bluetooth, music, other types of inputs coming into them, also other ways to infect them. Now let's talk about the cybercrime underground. Let's talk about what is available for a cyber criminal when he's doing his shopping. A lot of those offerings are actually meant to do that. Now let's look at another one. This is Bankier on the left. It is a fully functioning financial malware. It is being offered today for a couple of $1,000s, and this is really fraud in the box. So if you want to commit financial fraud against any type of financial institution, you really just need $4,000 or a couple of $1,000s, and you can buy that. Mazel Tov is actually a toolkit that allows you to convert a malware infection, convert a mobile malware into an infection campaign. So it has all the tools that allows you to distribute it in different ways, through markets, there's a landing page. So basically, if I'm a malware developer, I've developed the malware or bought the malware, this will allow me to send it to different people. And now let's look at a specific example. So this malware, which is for sale, it is a high-end cyber espionage type of tool. It gives you the ability to gain administrator privileges level on the device, grab and send all device information. So I would know everything about this device and about this user. I can intercept SMSs. I can send SMSs. I can grab everything. I can grab calls. I can record calls. I can look at all the contact logs. So basically, I'm in control of this tool, right? I'm not the legitimate user is basically at my mercy. Now let's look at a little price list that we've put together. So just getting a basic network of bots working for you in mobile, that would cost you about $4,000 as an initial payment, between $250 to $500 in monthly fees. That's renting, so I could just rent this whole network of mobile bots. If I already have the malware and I'm just looking to spread it, I can use that Mazel Tov offering. That's about $3,000. The high-end spyware is about $7,000. Obviously, you can always negotiate, so this is sort of the initial price. Bankier goes for about $5,000, and this whole Zitmo type of SMS interceptors was pretty cheap. You can rent it for about $715. So if I'm looking to target any of your firms, let's say I want to do an enterprise attack, I want to get some of your information, what I basically need is $7,000. Or maybe I need $10,000 because I also want to do the infection campaign. If I'm looking to take down a bank, looking to make money by stealing by taking over accounts, I would probably go with Bankier with $5,000 or maybe just a $715 for Zitmo. Not a lot of money given the return on investment, right? The return on investment for a cyber criminal is huge. At this point, I'd like to ask you our final polling question, which is, do you have controls in place to detect access from malware-infected devices? So just give us some view as to where you think you are today as it relates to some of the stuff we've talked about. Please use the votes button, the voting tab to do that. I'll wrap it up with talking about the consumer. Obviously, as you've seen from your own answers, as you see from the reality, consumers want security, but not necessarily security aware, and I think this is sort of the main challenge that we need to deal with. And also on a broader perspective, as you look at, as I want to provide you with a point of view on how to manage mobile security, and you guys are also welcome to always talk to us after this. We'd be happy to work with you. You really need to start building a strategy and an infrastructure to meet that strategy. And this slide is really an example of how we approach things, being able to protect devices, being able to protect the application and the content of the application and the access, being able to manage access and fraud, being able to also look at security intelligence. So as I said, the same webinar in 6 months is going to be a different webinar. So how do you get connected to that, all of that information? And how do you build that across the different categories? How do you build that for your consumers? How do you build that for bring your own device? How do you build that for other types of things? how do you actually connect that with other types of systems that you have that you need to manage, those security events, that the teams that actually look at alerts, right? How do you actually put all those things together? We'd be happy to. We're always happy to talk about those things, and I think there's a lot of need today for collaboration within the industry to come up with the strategy. The cyber criminals are not waiting; they have their strategy. They're moving ahead. At this point, I'd like to open it for a couple of questions. I see there are already a couple of questions coming in. I'll answer the first one. First question is, how do fraudsters make payments when they purchase malware in one of the underground forums you showed? It differs, but mostly it's Bitcoin. So the prices that you've seen were not originally showed in US dollars. They were shown in Bitcoin. We translated them as for the rate that existed at the time. But in general, cyber criminals don't really trust one another or trust credit cards and all those kinds of things. So that's mostly how things are done by using some type of digital coin or other types of non-official payment methods. Another question coming in is, how safe is the Apple operating system, iOS versus Android? It's a good question. Most of the malware that we're seeing today is Android-based. However, there have been several incidents of attacks against iOS devices. Some of you may have heard the name mask attacks and WireLurker. So basically, since there's not a lot of versions out there of the iOS operating system, once you do get a hack, once cyber criminals do recognize a vulnerability, they're able to make good use of it. All of this is true for non-jailbroken rooted devices or non-jailbroken for iOS. A jailbroken iOS device, I think, does not have a lot of security in it. The security has been neutralized, and there's not a lot of difference between that and an Android rooted device. And you always need to sort of separate between devices that have been jailbroken rooted and other types of devices. Another question: how can I find out if my bank's app is a target of fraud attacks? There are technical ways to monitor for that. I'd be happy to talk to you about that. We'd be happy if you want to contact that offline. But technically, you can look and detect malware, and that's part of the strategy that needs to happen. And initially, you need to do that just to understand sort of what are the threats that are specifically targeting you. Also, get information on what are the threats that are targeting your peers. Finally, what are some of the best practices to building a mobile security strategy? We're almost out of time, so I'll keep my answer short. First of all, understand the risks. Understand the risks generically, understand the risks as they apply to your industry, geography, and understand the risks as they apply to the specific way that you've set up your mobile assets and whatever it is needs to be mapped out. Once that's mapped out, can be categorized to the more high risk, and I give a point of view as what I think is the more high risk, and you can start mitigating those different things. But first of all, you need to gain that understanding, and that's critical. And I think where a lot of the people that we talk to are struggling with, how to just map out those risks. At this point, I'm out of time, and I will turn this back to our gracious host for some summary words.
Thank you so much, Ori, for sharing your time and expertise with our audience today. We do hope you come back and speak at one of our CSX events sometime soon. A big thank you to our sponsor, IBM. Their support has made it possible to offer this webinar free of charge. Before I wrap things up, I do want to remind you to check the attachments button to find some really great assets and resources from today's presentation. We also have some great information about our CSX training and certifications listed up here on our slide deck today. Also, you can get a copy of today's slide deck as well in the attachments. Also, as a reminder, ISACA members can earn 1 CPE for viewing today's webinar. Please check the attachments for a link to the event homepage where you'll find the CPE quiz. The webinar was recorded and will be available on archive 12 months following the conclusion of today's event. ISACA members can still earn CPE for viewing the archive. Again, please check back with the attachments button. We have some really great information, and I hope everyone has a great day. Thank you.